we're on Civics Founding Principle Unit 1. We're going to look at the study guide. So this is going to be part 1. So as I go through, you'll see the question and you'll see the answer, and I'll explain like why that's the answer, okay? First question you had are, what are the two strengths of the Articles of Confederation? And you had to explain each. The Articles of Confederation is the first government of the United States. So being that it's the first, it's not necessarily the greatest, but they did have two good things, two strengths that it actually did. One of the things that it did was the Land Ordinance of 1785. What the Land Ordinance did, it allowed for the processing and selling of the new land in the Northwest area. So everything west of the original 13 colonies, this is the original 13, everything west of here is what we pretty much kind of consider the new area. And so what this is going to do, they're going to go out here, they're going to look at it, they're going to start chopping it up and selling it. And that's important because we had a lot of debt after the American Revolution. So the selling of this new land is going to allow the United States to pay off all their debts that they had following the war. The second good thing it does is the Northwest Ordinance in 1787. What this does, it actually stated that any new territory that wanted to become a state would be equal to the original states. So we have like this prestigious 13 original states. But when this state, Tennessee, or this state over here, Ohio, when those territories want to become states, they're going to be allowed to be states, and they're going to be the same as all the other states. So even though Ohio is not as old as the state of North Carolina, it has the same power, same prestige in the United States. So this means that as the nation expands, all states are equal to the other states, and no state is more powerful than any other. Okay. So your second question is, what are the three weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? And you had to explain each. There's actually a lot of weaknesses. I'm just going to hit on a couple. So first one is there's no executive branch. So there's no enforcement of the laws. Under the Articles of Confederation, they had a legislative branch. They made a lot of laws, but there's no actual enforcement of those laws. And remember, we cut out Connie's chest, his shirt, to kind of demonstrate that. There's no judicial branch. So the legislative made laws, but there's no interpretation of whether those laws are legal or illegal. And that your judicial branch is your courts. And so remember, we kind of, decapitated and we cut off his head because it really does judge. It thinks, it does the moral kind of like, is this legal or is this illegal of our laws? And they don't have that. They don't have any of that for the federal government. They also have no power to collect taxes. So the legislative has to ask for money from the states. And you're not going to get it if you're asking states for more money, more tax money. Because remember, even to this day, you pay a federal tax and you also pay a state tax. If you didn't have to pay federal tax, then the state could charge you more. So states aren't going to take a hit. They're not going to take a cutback if they didn't have to. So they ask all the time for money, but they never get it. Another weakness is there's no standing army. So during a peacetime, when we're not in war, we call that a standing army. So if we got attacked under the Articles, we really wouldn't have an immediate response. You would have like Home Guard, which is your National Guard, but you wouldn't have any real response. So when you look at the Articles, there's a lot of weaknesses going on. And remember, the reason why they create it so weak is they're afraid of having a strong central government after being under Britain's rule for so long. Question 3 is which government document? So all you had to do was actually fill this one like little chart out. Common law is created through court decisions and rulings. It's not created by like the government Congress, okay? Common law is like lawsuit kind of law. So this is over time, this has become law. And I gave you the example of common law marriage. If you have been cohabitating, you've been living with someone for 7 years or more, and you're living like you're a married couple, then in the eyes of the law, you're married. So if you broke up, then you can actually have to split your properties, your money, okay? So that's common law. Over time, this has become law. First Continental Congress, they met in Philadelphia, and remember their meeting following the whole Boston Tea Party. Thanks to the Boston Tea Party, the king has put the intolerable acts on the colonists. So they meet and they write a protest letter. So the letter is, asking the king and asking Parliament to get rid of these laws. The next one is the English Bill of Rights. This is going to further limit the power of the monarchy. Even though England's government is very strong and very powerful, it's not the king that actually is, it's Parliament. And so the English Bill of Rights gives their elected government, Parliament, more power, and it limits the king's power over them. So when the colonists are always complaining about the king, it's not really the king, it's really their parliament that's actually the issue. The Second Continental Congress created an army and navy, and they're going to fight the American Revolution. So they're the ones doing all of the legwork. And they signed the Treaty of Paris, ending the American Revolution. And they create our first government, the Articles of Confederation. Second Continental Congress is really important. They're also the group that issued the Declaration of Independence, but they're kind of the guys that do pretty much everything during the war years. The Magna Carta is going to be one of the older ones that we talked about, but it introduced the concept of a limited monarchy, and so that was in 1215. So when you look at the colonies and you look at when they actually start thinking about their governments, they think about a government that is limited and has to answer to the people, because it started back here at 1215 with the Magna Carta. The next question 4 is, what is salutary neglect and how did it lead to the American Revolution? So salutary neglect is England not paying much attention to the colonies. They really don't do a whole lot with them. They're not enforcing their policies and laws. Like, they have all kinds of laws, but nobody's really enforcing it. So the colonies kind of do whatever they want to do, and England's just doing what it wants to do. And I kind of, equate this to kind of like a deadbeat parent. They're not really doing very much. They don't really care. And then all of a sudden they're going to start caring. And this is England caring after the French and Indian War. So after the French and Indian War in 1763, all of a sudden England's not going to be salutary neglect anymore. All of a sudden what they want to be is active and engaging, and they want to enforce their policies. And then naturally the colonists are a little resentful of it, and they're resentful because they've grown up. They've gone pretty much their whole time not having much contact with the mother country England, and now the mother country England wants to come into the picture and wants to start dictating, ruling, telling them they have to do this stuff. There's also the we've never paid taxes before, so why would we start paying it now kind of thinking. So the colonists just feel like they've done everything on their own. They have created their own governments. They have their own society. They have their own economics. They don't really feel like they have to answer to the former mother country, because they don't consider England their mother country anymore. It's kind of just this distant parent that's out there. The next question, number 5, is what was the proclamation of 1763 and why were the colonists upset by it? So the proclamation drew a line. Here are the 13 colonists. This is after the French and Indian War. England has won it, but it was a real struggle for them winning this war. So what England decides to do is take the Appalachian Mountains and make it a border, a fence. Okay, it's a natural border. So they say to the American Indians, everything here west of this is yours. We're not going to mess with you. Please don't mess with us. Colonists, you need to stay on this area, and that's how it's going to be from now on. Now the colonists are upset because most of the colonists are farmers. 9 out of 10 of them farm. Even the ones that are like your merchants and stuff up here, they still have little like personal farms and stuff that they have. And then when you look kind of at the South, everything in the southern colonies is based on farming. So you're telling them in Virginia that that's all they're ever going to have. They're never going to have any more land. And land is wealth. Farming is wealth. So you just told them that they're never going to be any richer than they are right now. This is where they're going to stay for that moment until whatever, okay? They're never going to lift this. In their opinion, the colonists are being stuck at that financial like status. So the colonists aren't supposed to go past the mountains. They can't take any more American Indian land. And if they do go past the mountains and the American Indians find them, then they are on their own. So this is limiting the economic growth of the colonies. And so they don't like it, and it's going to be one of the sore points between England and the colonies, and it does lead to the American Revolution. Question 6, you had to fill out the chart based on the Enlightenment. So philosopher names, beliefs, and how it influenced the government. We did this in the interactive. So Montesquieu, 3 syllables, 3 branches. He believed that by creating 3 branches, he would create a system of checks and balances to the government's power. Pretty much that is what we do. We have a 3-branch system. We have Congress, the legislative that makes our laws. We have an executive, a president, and all his executive agencies that enforce the law. And we have a judicial branch that judges, interprets the laws. So anytime like the president is enforcing a law, he's enforcing a law that the legislative made and has been ruled legal by the judicial, by the court systems, okay? If the judicial thinks that the law is illegal, like it's not constitutional, then they throw it out. And therefore, that's a check to the legislative and the executive power. So we always have checks and balances to the government's power. No one branch is more powerful than any of the others. They're all equal in power. Rousseau is one of the philosophers who believed in a social contract. He's actually the guy that wrote it. So he said if the government is not living up to their deal they're in, people have to revolt. So the government is supposed to protect us. That's the actual social contract. That's the Constitution. So in the Constitution, it says what the government cannot take away from you. So when you read the Constitution, when you look at the amendments, the 27 amendments, it says what the government can't do to you. Now, if the government starts to do stuff, then we, the people, call them on it. They fix it. If they don't fix it, then we revolt. So that's how his social contract theory works. Locke is the guy who believed in the natural rights to life, liberty, and property. And pretty much that is what the Constitution protects. It protects your right to life, liberty, and property. That's why if someone broke into your home, they violated your property, it is the government that goes after them. It is the government that pursues them, and the government would be the police. Jefferson takes from Locke, but he borrows some, but not all, and he changes natural rights to inalienable or unalienable rights, and he calls them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Again, this is what the Constitution is supposed to protect. So it protects our natural or our inalienable rights. Voltaire believed that the government should not be led by religious leaders, which we know as a government called a theocracy. So what he thought was that there should be a separation of church and state, of your religion and your actual government. And that is what we have. The United States does not have a selected religion. There's a establishment clause. The government's not allowed to establish a religion. And the government has free exercise clause. You're allowed to exercise your religion as long as it doesn't violate someone else's rights.